and this is the NACUSA-LA Composer Conversation on music for all ages and all stages with Carla Bartlett and Deon Price. And well, if you don't know them, they'll tell you a little bit about themselves when they start. One thing to be aware is that we are going to take questions, but at the end. Hi, Michelle. So
Hi.
we are going to start with Carla, and if you have questions, you can put them in the chat, or you can save them until the end. Okay, and with that, Carla Bartlett.
Okay. Hi. Happy to be with you. Thank you, Jay. um, if everyone will mute themselves, I think it might work out better audio wise. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully that works. And I'm going to pull up my PowerPoint. Can you see my screen? Everybody can see? Okay, cool. All right, well, topic tonight is writing for students. And in writing for students, I think the first thing we need to do is identify our goals. Why do you want to write for students? Well, for me, my overarching goal is to try and invite students inside the music. I want to provide music that is accessible, user-friendly or technically viable, inviting and fun. I want to share with them the context or what inspired me to write a piece and the emotional effect I was trying to achieve. I also want to provide music that is a vehicle for analysis and understanding. This way, you give your students a model for their own compositional processes. And don't we want to encourage our future composers? We can invite students into our music by helping them understand how we think as we compose. And we can teach them some of the techniques that composers use to develop musical ideas. These techniques are sometimes called compositional devices. Compositional devices are techniques that provide unity as well as variety and interest. Here are a few of them: imitation, pedal point, ostinato and other accompaniment figures, motivic development, augmentation and diminution, the pace of harmonic rhythm, patterns, major-minor juxtaposition, and instances of tension and release. So your pieces can provide valuable examples of these for your students. They can illustrate a number of compositional devices that your students can then use as reference for their own compositions. Tonight, I'm going to share 3 of my pieces written for students, looking in particular at how I've tried to invite them inside the music. Let's start off with Inspirations in C, written in a variety of contemporary styles. Let's look at number 1. So the first thing we notice is that we've got the compositional device of repeating patterns. The right-hand pattern, eighth notes and quarter notes, small intervals. The left-hand melody, very slow moving dotted halves and larger intervals. The piece is technically accessible. It only has 7 different right-hand patterns. Pattern number 1, 4 measures long. Pattern number 2, 4 measures long, and so forth. There are 7 patterns, either 4 measures, 2 measures, or 1 measure. The first black key doesn't happen until measure 49. So, and the pattern is all in the 5 fingers. So very accessible. And the left hand, being slower moving, kind of anchors the movement of the right hand. This piece can be studied as an example of a particular contemporary style with implied harmonies, a slow harmonic rhythm, and a gradual harmonic progression, hallmarks of minimalism. This piece can be an entree into this style and lead to the study of other composers. Terry Riley in C, for example, Steve Reich's piano phase, Philip Glass's solo piano music. We can invite the student, after they study the piece, to create their own 5-finger pattern to this melody, or create a different melody to these 5-finger patterns, or to create their own minimalist composition where the repeating pattern is the main compositional device. So let's listen to 1. Can you hear that okay? Another way to invite students inside a piece is to make it more accessible and comprehensible by helping them understand the context of the piece, to enter into the mindset of the composer and to see the reasons for using various devices. Let's look at another collection called Piano Postcards. The big concept here is music as communication. These are short pieces meant to express a sentiment, an emotion, a message, just as a regular postcard would do. Let's look at one of the pieces in this book called Please Uncle Sam. Here is the introduction, written in the form of a real postcard from a sister who's missing her big brother, away from home, fighting in the war. Dear Uncle Sam, I know you need Ryan to fight in the war, but it's been so long, and he is my only brother. Can't you please bring him home? We miss him awful bad. Sincerely, Lucy. To capture the sentiment of this piece of music, this introduction is written in the form of a real postcard. After reading the introduction, you could talk to the student about how they would feel in this situation. Have they ever missed someone so badly that it hurt? As you listen to the piece, you can ask, how has the sense of yearning and sadness and pleading been created? Let's look at the music. You see that okay? Yeah. Okay, so the first thing we may notice is the rhythm of the melody. We've got a quarter to eighths, a quarter to eighths, a quarter to eighths, and a half note. Then we have an elongation of that, an augmentation of that, 2 quarters and a half, 2 quarters and a half. And if we look at the title, we can see quickly that this could be actually sung. Please, Uncle Sam, Uncle Sam, Uncle Sam, bring him home, bring him home. So you can point that out to the student, and the repetition inside the phrases creates a kind of a pleading. The harmonic suspensions later in the piece provide a yearning for the tension and the release of the harmony. Other devices to notice would be the pedal point, consistent pedal point throughout the piece, the use of the minor, and when the melody comes back here at the end, we've got it in the left hand lower, which adds a little more of a bittersweet flavor to it. And then right here in the last measure, we see bring him home in augmented. After studying the piece, you could ask the student to write their own musical postcard to a friend, a parent, a loved one far away. Let's listen to Dear Uncle Sam. We can also help students get inside the music by helping them understand that composers are often inspired by their own experiences. When I travel, for example, I get inspired by the new places and the people that I meet. So, let's look at one of my musical travel journals, in which composition serves as a way to put new experiences into musical expression. In Paris Suite, each piece aims to express my impressions of a site or an event in this beautiful historic city. Each piece has a photo and a written introduction to help set the context. Let's look at Centre Pompidou. We can read the introduction about this modern museum in Paris with all kinds of crazy art. You can ask the student if they've ever visited a museum, one with contemporary, very recently made art. You can give them homework of an internet search for contemporary art. And you can talk about ways to capture the spirit of the unusual art through music. Let's take a look at the notation. Well, the first thing we'll probably notice is that we've got a new element in our piece. And for those of your students that are kind of lively, this might be just the thing, hand and feet percussion. We would notice the angular melody, the plethora of articulation that adds dramatic flair, the complex time signature. As we get into the piece, we will notice the counterpoint, the imitation, the stretto, and as the piece gets more complex towards the end. After studying the piece, you could ask your student if they have a particular fond memory of a new experience or place or adventure, and use that as an inspiration for writing their own piece. So let's listen to Centre Pompidou. In conclusion, I hope you are inspired to write music for your students, to invite them inside your music, and to encourage them to become our next generation of composers. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. I wish that I had as many contemporary sounding student pieces when I was a student. Now, in case you got here a little after the beginning, we're all going to hold our questions till the end, or you can type them in the chat. And without further ado, we're going to have Dr. Deon Nielsen-Price do our next part of the presentation.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes.
I have to fix this screen a little bit. I was so interested in Carla's wonderful pieces. They're so wonderful. I know we're having questions at the end, but I have a couple of things I have to say about it. Every year I adjudicate the Music Teachers Association of California compositions. And I just finished yesterday this year's evaluations. And your list of compositional devices are so wonderful. They're such a good reminder of what I should have been thinking about in my adjudication. So I want to get copies of that. I'll be glad when David puts it on the, and makes it available for us.
Will do.
Okay. So on my program, I was planning to do it live, but we were having technical issues, especially lighting in the evening at the piano. So I decided last week to have it pre-recorded. And I had I called around. I'm new in the area of Arroyo Grande, where I am now. And so I contacted the university here, Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And their recording engineer has been very active recording all the recitals, video recitals, which people are doing remotely, you know. But he came and we had such a good time experimenting with different cameras and different camera angles. So that's why I'm doing it. And also to do this one, it's been a long time since I spent hours teaching, and several years. So I had to reach back to do this presentation. I did it for another organization, Mu Phi Epsilon, and they wanted it on education and music education. And so I've been trying to take up a couple of minutes here before people join that are planning to join at 7:30. So anyway, I'm about ready to start. I thought another reason I thought it would be good to record it is that if other people are interested in it, I can just point them to the video and I don't have to do it live myself. So let's see if I can. Are you allowing me now to screen share?
Yes.
My name is Deon Nielsen-Price, and I'm a composer and a pianist. And I'm going to give a presentation to you on my angelic piano pieces. The name of my presentation is Angelic Piano Pieces for All Ages and Stages. And so this is not going to be a comprehensive presentation, but perhaps you'll find some little thing that will be useful to you. But before I start that, I would like to show you two very comprehensive projects that I did. When I was getting my doctorate at University of Southern California, I watched these great artists teaching who had so much experience with the literature, and they were teaching very good solo pianists how to play how to collaborate with other musicians. And there were so many myriad of details. And I was motivated to write this book because I wanted to take those details and collapse them into principles that someone could learn from a book. And then those artist teachers could spend their time on the repertoire that they knew so well with those insights. So this came out and we sold it out. And in 2006, we put a second edition, and we included more in this about sight reading because I had had a lot of requests for that when I traveled to different universities promoting the book and doing workshops and master classes. So in this book, we work on listening skills to hear your part in the musical texture with the right balance, and responsive playing skills for the right balance and for the right style, the right tone quality, and the absolute precision of ensemble, the syncing of the different parts. So that's a topic for another discussion. So as you may know, I have spent actually 57 years teaching private piano lessons in my studio and 20 years at the college and university level. And when I was doing that, I had piano classes of all levels. I also had private lessons for piano majors, and I coached pianists who were preparing for competitions. But along the way, I created a method of teaching for beginning adults. And it's been published in this book, readingkeyboardmusic.com publishes it. This says College Class Piano Comprehensive Approach. And that was my editing that made it the comprehensive approach. So this is essentially a method of reading that is very non-traditional, but in my pilot classes for the texts that I used for 2 years, it was very successful. When it was published, I was already turning from my piano career more to composing and actually performing. So I did not feel I could go around the country promoting this book with its non-traditional approach. But it is published, and the pre-reading concepts we'll be doing some of today that are in the first part of that book. So you'll see that on my projects, I pretty much combine composition and piano. And today we're going to do my 8 studies. They're 8 character pieces in my angelic piano pieces set that are based on keyboard patterns, not major and minor scales. So the first one was composed, some of these are composed by the students or co-composed with the students. The first one was composed in the first lesson of a 15-year-old boy. And when they look at the keyboard, these beginning students, they see these 88 keys and they're overwhelmed and they think, oh, I don't want to make a mistake. So to break the ice, the first thing I do is have them play all the keys on the keyboard. So we take our right hand and we go to the low end of the keyboard and we play a glissando up the white keys. We take our left hand, turn it over on the back and play on the nails, and we play a glissando on the black keys. We do it all at the same time in the piano class. It's magnificent. And we learn the finger numbers. They're different, as you know, from other instruments, from violin, for instance, so we have to know what finger numbers we're using. And somewhere along that beginning, we got soft and loud. All right, so we're exploring the patterns on the keyboard. The 3 blacks, the 2, 3, 2 that alternate up down the keyboard. So this boy made up this piece, and I think I added an introduction, but we didn't have a title. And about that time, I was visiting Hearst Castle on the Central California coast. And sitting on a big table in the entry hall was a large ceramic bust of a black angel, and her wings were hovering around. And I looked at the back, and her name was Descending Night. And I thought that would be a good title for this piece. So this is Descending Night. I decided if I was going to teach at this beginning level, I was just going to go and have a good time. And I think the students had fun too. I had one 70-year-old man, you know, in community college, you get all ages. And he said he had a master's degree in engineering, and he had a career as an engineer. Now he was retired. He'd never had so much fun in his life. So that was good. So some of the additional pre-reading goals that we use with all ages of beginners, besides the keyboard patterns, the rest of the keyboard patterns, the 2 half steps, white key half steps, the D between the 2 black keys. And I often had them play it right as I clap. They go down and they have to say what they're doing. 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, right as I'm clapping. Or coming up with the D, 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 D. And the amazing thing is, this is the real advantage of class piano. The students have to play together, feel the beat, feel the ensemble, and they don't always get that in when they're practicing alone. They might play out of rhythm and just reinforce their bad habits. So the assignment, after we did all these piano patterns, was to go home and learn to play them with your eyes shut, because there are many fine pianists who are blind and they are feeling these spaces between the black key groups. Some of the other things we worked on was fast and slow. That got us into tempo. Short and long got us into rhythm and note values, duration of sound. And the beats in my adult classes, I always have them take their pulse, and they're always amazed to find that somebody in the class might have a pulse of 58 or 60. Somebody else may be 120, and they're going along regularly inside their body at these different rates of speed, these different tempi. We also do a lot of singing and match pitches as we sing the pitches. And I like them to know that they are in a melody. They're singing a song with their fingers. They're not just playing keys, you know. So young children can do this also. Oh, let's go back. So another what I'm going to play next is called Cupid Starts. And Cupid, it has a little story. You see we're trying to show to represent the darts being shot to the lovers. And there's a place where he's getting ready to pull the bow, and a place where it's running through the air. And this is, the right hand plays 3 black keys. The left hand plays 3 white keys. Actually, they start the opposite. The 3 white keys in the right hand, the 3 black keys in the left, and in the middle they switch. So if you look at how that's notated, I forgot to show you the notation of descending night. We'll get that later. But if you look at the way that's notated, you'll see that the key signature on the treble clef for the right hand is a big natural. Everything's white keys. The key signature for the left hand is a big sharp, meaning everything is black keys. So anyway, this is Cupid Starts. So we should go back and look at the notation for the first one I did, Descending Night. The first notation was graphic. I was just getting into notating on the computer, and there was a program called Note Writer where the composer can do anything he wants with the notes. So this is what the first one looked like. But then that program was not supported. So I finally published all of my music with Finale. And this is what the Descending Night looks like on Finale. All black keys, if you recall, the 2 and 3 black keys. So our key signature is a large sharp right hand and a large sharp in the left hand. And the Cupid Starts, here we have this key signature. Now, the approach with the keyboard patterns is really good with children. My own children don't know when they started piano lessons because we always had music time. When they were toddlers, babies, we sang, we danced, we played up in the birds and down in the bears. In the middle where we sing, we sang a lot of songs. We did a lot of solfege. They did a lot of intervals. And we had a good time in our music time. Well, about 1970, New York City Opera came to Los Angeles. And they put out a call for children to sing in the second act of La Boheme. So my 2 oldest girls wanted to audition. So we went down to the music center and we saw all these professional actors carrying their portfolios and all. And then we went into the music auditions, and of course they were not prepared. But my girls could sing all the intervals. Tritones were no problem for them. And so they passed the audition. But the younger one was only 9, and they said that was too young. But the older one actually sang the solo line that the children sing, Vola tromba e cavalier. I want the trumpet and the horse. And the New York City Opera came back to Los Angeles 3 years in a row, and they did La Boheme each time. So my daughter did the part for 3 years until she grew out of the costume. So I want to tell you about 2 other young men that, 3-year-olds that were brought to me. Different times, different parents. But the one came, the parents said, I cannot keep my 3-year-old boy away from the piano. He's at the keyboard all day long. And what could I do with him? So I worked with him on all the things I'd been doing with my children, especially on intervals. And the other one that came a year later, his mother said the same thing. She could not keep him away from the keyboard. Well, I want to tell you about those two boys now. I only had them a very short time, maybe a year, maybe 2 years at the most, when they were very small. But the one is Charlie Rosen, and he is very active on Broadway. He is a composer, an arranger, a conductor, a producer. He plays, I think, every instrument. He's a one-man band, and he plays them all very well. And the other one is Bruce Russell, and he has a master's degree in piano and a certificate of performance from Manhattan School of Music, and he does a lot of solo playing and collaborative playing, and he is on the faculty at Cerritos College. The important thing about those boys, of course I take all the credit even though I only had them when they were 3 years old, but the important thing is they both knew at age 3 what they wanted to do when they grew up. They knew what their life's work was. I know 30-year-olds who are still wondering what they're going to do when they grow up. It's so quite amazing that some people know so young. So I started thinking about myself. I think I was 4 when I started begging for a piano. And I got one finally when I was 7, which means that for the last 80 years, I've spent quite a lot of time, nearly every day, in front of the piano. So back to the angelic piano pieces. Now we do play white keys. And the first thing is to get that 5-finger position, 1 finger on each key, and just stand up like soldiers, no collapsing. You have to stand up so. And we do these, to get these into the fingers, we repeat them. We might say the rhythm of the child. Johnny Jones, Johnny Jones, Johnny Jones, Johnny Jones. And the left hand, Johnny Jones, Johnny Jones. The more we repeat it, the more it gets into the muscles of the fingers. So we're doing these 5-finger clusters. So now for this piece, I said, now just roll your left hand up and roll your right hand down. And I wrote this piece called Snow Angels. The idea of the story is you're kind of tepidly walking through the snow, and suddenly you plop down and make snow angels. So this is Snow Angels. So now they have their 5-finger position. I tell them, play a cluster, pick up 2, pick up 4, play the 1, 3, 5. Now you have a triad. So we practice those to get those into the muscles. Peter, 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 till the fingers know that. Now and then we get into major triads. So there are 12, because there's 12 keys, as you know. So they already know 3. They know the ones that are just white keys, the C, the F, and the G. So then we go to the second group, which has a black key in the middle. White on the outside, black in the middle. There's the A chord, the D chord, and the E chord. And we get those into the muscles of the fingers. Then the third group, black, white, black. Black on the outside, white in the middle. There's the A flat, the D flat, and the E flat. Now we have 9 of the 12 chords. And the last group, the fourth group, do not have the same pattern. But by now, they know that to play a triad, they've got to skip a finger. They've got to skip a letter. And by now, they can all go around the room saying A, C, E, B, D, F, C, E, G, D, F, A, E, G, B, F, A, C, and G, B, D. Because those are the letters of the triads, regardless of sharps and flats. Those are the letters. And they know that. They also know that on the staff, you have to skip spaces or skip a line, so that if you see line, line, line on the staff, that's a triad, or space, space, space. So when they know all, so in this fourth group, we have the 2 B, D, F chords. We've got B, D sharp, F sharp, and B flat, D, F. And then the last one, the 12th, is 3 black keys, F sharp, bass, C sharp, and G flat, B flat, D flat. So as soon as the student knows all of those 12 chords, they can play pink clouds and harps. And I call it harps because some of the triads I arpeggiate like a harp. Now, they don't have to play the same chord in each hand, you know, so there's some nice bichordal effects in this. But they do have to know those 12 positions of 5/3 chords. I put a little background in this one. And of course, as soon I had a student who played that for their audition to get into Hamilton Performing Arts School, and they were very impressed. So as soon as they know 3-note chords, you can add another third on top and make a 7th chord. So this is a little improvisation on 7th, different qualities of 7th chords. Now, a more advanced piece, because it has composite meters that keep changing. Let's see if I can find it here. This is called Angels Dancing on Black and White Keys. There are a lot of fifths in it. The right hand is playing F sharp, C sharp. The left hand has C and G and D. And sometimes we do the inversions. You'll also hear some 5-finger scales on in the white keys, and also full octave scales coming up white keys all the way. So Angels Dancing on Black and White Keys. So we've changed the cameras a little bit. The next one I'm going to play is Green Tara. And there is a photo here of Green Tara. She is the Tibetan goddess of compassion. And she is green. And in this piece, I try to make the compassion by sweetening the melody with sixths and thirds. But I also wanted some of the Tibet effect. So I wrote the piece in E minor, and the last section is in E major. And as you know, there is no F natural in E minor or E major. So I decided to use F natural to represent gongs. So this piece begins with gongs and chimes, wind chimes. The eighth piece is an improvisation on two major seventh chords, A, C sharp, E, G sharp, and B flat, D, F, A. So I call this cherubic messenger. So that's my angelic piano pieces. I took them to Alfred Music, and they had a committee. They played them. They said they loved them, but they could not publish them because piano teachers do not buy contemporary music. Now, some of us are perennial students of music. When I was getting my master's degree in piano at University of Michigan, I took a class in composition. And he said, Leslie Bassett said, I'm going to give you 4 notes. See what you can do with them. He gave us C, E flat, D, E natural. Those 4. So I wrote a 4-movement piece. And when I played it for my piano teacher, getting ready for my master's recital, he insisted that I play it on the master's recital, which I did. The beginning of the first movement, though, I made a little fugue subject out of it. So I'm just going to play this opening fugue. There are 3 statements of the subject, and then there are variations. I'll just maybe play the first variation, but here's the fugue.
That was excellent. Let's all unmute and give a round of applause for our two presenters.
Wonderful. Wonderful, Carla. Great.
Well, I have to give what do the kids say, a shout out to Deon because, I stopped composing for a number of years and focused on teaching. And then when I came back to composing, I found NACUSA. And one of the first times was at your house, Deon, was it Culver City, maybe?
Yes.
Uh-huh. And I explained to the group that, I was nervous because, this was my return to composing and I played a couple of pieces and you were so encouraging and enthusiastic and you've been that way ever since. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
That we were very impressed with your music. It was really beautiful and you played it so well. I recall that.
That was about 2007, I think, Deon. Yeah.
Well, it's true today, too.
No, thank you.
That was beautifully played, both of you. And the video really worked really well.
Yeah, it did.
That guy did more than just shoot that video. He did some nice editing, too.
Beautiful.
Does anyone have any questions, comments, or things to add?
I think he's muted.
Is someone trying to?
Louise.
You have to unmute yourself.
Luis de Matteo,
Yep.
we can't hear you. You need to unmute.
That is William Corbett Jones. His wife's name is Louise. He's using her computer, I see. He is a 90-year-old concert pianist who is unbelievable. I'm so glad you joined us, Bill.
Okay, can you try explaining to Bill that he needs to click the mute button?
Bill, you need to click the mute button because we cannot hear you. Can you see the little microphone with the line through it at the bottom of your screen? If you click on it, that line will go away and we will hear you. Still there. It should be on the lower left side of your screen.
Yeah, you have to click on the bottom of the screen to get the menu to show up.
Can you hear us, Bill? It's still muted. He's gonna.
Maybe get some assistance.
While you're, oh yes, here we go. This is Louise.
Yay!
Now we can hear you, Bill. So glad you were able to join us.
Speak.
Thank you. Well, I'll start all over. I was in awe of your powers of invention, Deon. I mean, you can just take just a few notes and make a composition out of them. I mean, that's a special talent. I loved your playing. And anyway, I think some teachers want to pick up on those pieces you've composed and use them in their teaching too. Bravo, bravo.
Well, thank you. Thank you. So glad you were there.
Wow.
More questions, comments, things to add?
That was just a beautiful, beautiful exposure of music and teaching, Deon. Really, thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Linda, for joining us too.
Thank you.
So nice to see you again.
Likewise, you are amazing. Amazing.
I know.
I enjoyed both of you so much. There's wonderful music, wonderful invention, lovely playing, and such a attention to the students and creativity and getting them to get their own powers up and running. But with
Oh, it's the pleasure to do it.
If I can compare you to a different composer, I don't know if that's kosher or not, but I'm thinking of Bartok Microcosmos. Sometimes
Well, of
he'll
course.
have he'll have a little piece and he'll call it fourths, but alternating thirds or something like that. And it's like what you do. He can create something out of almost nothing, just a
Just a
couple of
little
notes.
poke,
You
poke,
can
poke, yeah.
you can do the same thing.
Well, he was one of my models. I
Yeah.
studied his piano music with Georges Chandor, who is
Yes.
his
Wow.
protege.
Right.
And I played all the two piano things with Georges Chandor when I was at University of Michigan.
Oh
Oh,
my God.
sure.
That's
And he
incredible.
was wonderful. But those key signatures that I used were influenced by Bartok's key signatures. I don't think he used them exactly like I did, but he had very creative key signatures
You're
and
right.
in
True.
his
True.
Microcosmos, and elsewhere. So that was influenced by him. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The other thing is when I used to teach the Microcosmos, and what I would tell the students was that you at first hearing it doesn't make any sense to your ear, so I always tell them that their challenge here is to make the most beautiful music out of what he put in the notes, and they
Yes.
were able to come to the music of it, because there is a lot of musicality. It's just unusual to our ears.
Right.
so,
Absolutely.
so
Absolutely.
I liked working with Bartok.
I hope you'll just keep on composing
Well, more
and put
composed.
on more concerts.
Yeah.
We will.
Well,
We have
I,
one coming up in April, I think.
well, one in February. February 21st is the next one, and it's in celebration of Black History Month.
Oh, yes.
This is the Interfaith Center at the Presidio. We're doing it on Zoom, and I'm
Oh,
sure
yes.
everybody who's here tonight will get a flyer about it, a notice.
All right.
We've been doing these once a month. And then the one in March is going to be put on by this organization, National Association of Composers, Los Angeles chapter, which will all be Southern California composers. And it's going to be a pre-recorded concert that we did in July, I think, called Piano Splash. It's all piano music. And Bill, you would just be thrilled with it. We have wonderful pianists, a real variety of music, and I really encourage you to come. That'll be in March. I can't remember the date, but you'll get a notice. Third Sunday,
21st.
21st of March.
All right. I'll be on the lookout for it for sure.
Yep, please do. And take care of yourself.
And you the same.
I have a
What I,
question. Go ahead.
what I was amazed is that you had a way of them, learning such complex pieces, but because of your, technique that now we're just going to do these, 3 block keys or, the patterns or whatever it was that you were using as your device, they could really learn something a lot more complex than the usual, Alfred,
Right, right.
which would, do similar things, but your ideas were so much higher level than what they would get normally.
Well, mine were skipping around in terms of some were for beginners, some were for more advanced. They weren't just chronologically organized. They're just things I wrote along the way. But if you look at the middle C approach and the kind of music that Carla wrote, absolutely necessary to build the habits and build the what's the word I'm thinking of? The flexibility,
Fluency.
the what?
Fluency.
Yeah, the fluency. Thank you.
Hmm?
Build the fluency. You have to do that, and they're wonderful. And I would love to get your. Well, I'm not teaching anymore. You know, I stopped teaching in 2002, and now, like I said, this was a reach back. So don't send them to me because I can't use them. But I do recommend them. I think they're wonderful. Your especially your minimalistic on C. I love that. I thought, well, they were all really good. And did you, are they published?
Yes, I'm self-publishing those, and they're available on my website, True Luck Music.
Right.
What I what I love about your approach, Deon, is it's so systematic and simple in a way, such that the student, I think, gains a tremendous amount of confidence in approaching the keyboard, and that's just, you know, so often the students get scared right away because it's a big piano and all these keys and you know, your approach is I just think you know, a way to really build confidence.
Good. Well, I have seen that. The thing is that in that second book that I showed you, reading keyboard music, that is an approach to reading which is based on the patterns of the keyboard. And it's a really quick way to learn to read music. It's
Great.
really successful. I worked with, when I was in high school, I happened to take lessons from the man who developed that method of reading. And it went over so well. He was head of a music department in a little music academy. And it just happened at the time of the Second World War. I don't know. He never could get it published. So I have used it all of the years of my private teaching because it's a wonderful method of reading. And then we developed this college piano course, and which I developed over the years. And I've used that a lot. And if you're interested, that's really a good way to learn, but it's not a middle C approach. It's really different. But all those patterns that we did lead right into it.
Yep.
Carla, your Paris piece, I'm forgetting the exact title. It's wonderful. And I'm wondering, it has a lot of what I would call contemporary ideas. Now, they were really new more like 100 years ago, but they're still regarded as being modern or contemporary.
Ironically.
Yes. So when students try and play those pieces, you know, like Paris, do they see it as being modern music?
In my experience, yeah, they do because, as Deon mentioned, so much of the canon of piano teachers is strictly, you know, from the classical tradition. You start with Bach, and then you get to Mozart, and then Beethoven, and maybe there's a little Debussy in there. And for most children, that's about it. I mean, if you even get Bartok or even Gershwin, it's pretty unusual, I think. So immediately the kind of the quirkiness they take as, oh, this is contemporary.
Carla, did you take it to another publisher like I did? Did you?
Yes, I did, and I got the exact same response that you did. This is really great, but you know, we can't. Yeah, we can't.
Well, I have a suggestion. There's a number of NACUSA members who are teachers, and maybe there are some teachers who actually would like their students to be exposed to something that's a little more contemporary. And I'm sure that more than half of the students would like to be playing something more contemporary if they were asked. So maybe we can send out a little announcement, a newsletter that NACUSA composers have a resource, or members of NACUSA have a resource of piano pieces for students in graded levels, from beginners to intermediate and advanced, that you can get here. And maybe that'll bring on a few teachers, and eventually, maybe the publishers will change their mind when the teachers start asking for something more modern.
Yeah, it's kind of a chicken or egg thing, isn't it? David, that's a kind offer. It would be great. And surely Deon and I are not the only two composers in our group that write for students.
Well,
Right. So I was thinking of sending this.
look at our piano splash. We have all levels of music on that usually. Well, it's usually more advanced, but having a list of piano music by our NACUSA composers, I think would go right along with our piano splash performances, don't you? I mean, there's a body of work right there. If we added some student things to it, we've already got a catalog.
Well, I'm thinking of starting with something really simple, just the name of the composer, the link to where you can get it, the pieces, and then just a very brief description of what the level of difficulty is. Is this suitable for beginners, or for all ages?
So, David, maybe we could write an article for the NACUSA National Newsletter about this session and then put the list there.
That's a great idea.
I have a series of piano books called "I Want to Quit Piano, but My Folks Won't Let Me."
Perfect.
To hear see your books.
Another one called "Piano Solos for More Than 10 Fingers," in which I use stuffed balloons and frisbees. So we could include those too.
There you go.
Yes, we could. That's an excellent idea. We want to have lots of options out there. Though at some point people will decide that something is the cool thing and they'll go with that one. But let's offer lots of different things. At least that's my thought. And I also had another question. This is for Deon. A lot of what you're doing as student exercises makes perfect sense from that viewpoint. That this is a very simple and logical step-by-step approach to learning how to work the piano. But if I step back, I can also say that, all right, if I take the pianistic part of it away, this is very gestural music, where it's going up, and it can go up as far as you feel it's needed to go up, or down as far down as it needs to go down. There's not a sense of it being limited by the technique of the player, that we have to stay in this limited range because that's all they understand. And I'm interested if that it goes through your mind, that that I want to have angels, and angels can't be confined to one octave. They have to be freer than that.
I have a wonderful quote by a student of Eastern thought about that, about the angels. You see, I have a set of pieces that I call angelology, and the angelic piano pieces are part of that set. So he was talking about all of them. But yes, as I said, the first thing we do is play all the keys on the piano, all the whites in a glissando and all the blacks in a glissando. And then when we do the patterns, we do them. And when they start learning the letter names of the keys, when I have a class, especially of kids, I would have them start at the bottom, playing with one finger, saying the letter names A, B, C, D, E, G. And when they get to the next day, the next person starts on the lowest one and then the next one. So we have 3 or 4 people going up the keyboard, saying the letter names, of the entire keyboard. And then when we do pieces, then we have to see what register of the keyboard it's written in. And that's part of the reading method that brings out.
So
Yeah.
good.
Have you ever heard this one? I attended a master class one time by Karl Ulrich Schnabel, the son of the famous Arthur Schnabel.
Yes.
And one student sat at the piano and appeared very nervous. And Karl Ulrich Schnabel said, "Well, what are you afraid of?" And so finally she said, "Oh, I'm afraid I'll make some mistakes." He says, "Oh, you mean you're afraid you're going to hit some wrong notes?" And she said, "Yeah. Come on, let's hit some wrong notes." And he went all over the piano, up and down, and he got, to loosen her up. That was one way of doing it. I thought it was cute.
Just before I started work at USC, I was working with Daniel Pollock the first year that he came there. But
Yes.
I spent a year with Abe Cerco, who was
Yes.
teaching at UCLA, but I was just taking private lessons. And he was a student of Karl Ulrich Schnabel. And so he had that Schnabel approach. And the thing about that was you spend your entire lesson on the first 2 measures, because that's the kernel for the whole piece of the classical music that he was teaching. And so that's what I think of when I think of Schnabel.
Interesting. All right, so this has been excellent, very informative, plus beautiful music. And our conversation will continue on next Thursday, February 18th at 7 p.m., where we're going to have Adrian Albert, My Life in Music, Part 2. Now, Part 1 was a smash success, and if you weren't there, you really missed something special. She's not only a wonderful composer and performer, but she also has amazing stories that you won't get anywhere else, because she was one of those people who was in the room when very famous things happened. So if you know Adrian, you know that it's going to be good, and if you don't know Adrian, you really should. So next week, this time, 7 p.m., our conversation with Adrian Albert.